We're recording now. I'm trying something a wee bit different. I'm live. Uh, don't know how that's gonna play out, but it's going on right now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good whatever time it is, and welcome to another episode of Trevantine. This is the podcast where you hear the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of an 18-year-old senior in high school being affected by the coronavirus. So, I spent about 2 hours this morning trying to figure out how I could live stream this. And from what I can see, everything's going well. You can hear me, I believe, and then I can hear you, not really, but I can see what you're gonna say. Maybe if I open it up on my computer. Um, but yeah, I have chat, I have everything. Hopefully, we can start doing these more daily live like this. That'd be really interesting. But I actually have one of my debate friends, Warren Barge, in the call with me. So let's hear what he has to say about this issue. Hop in on Discord. Hey Warren, can you hear me, buddy?
Yes, I can.
How are you doing today, dude?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
I couldn't complain. I'm doing what I love.
That's right. I guess this has kind of provided you an opportunity to really not only have time to talk about this, but also have something fun to talk about.
Exactly. I mean, not that disease is any fun to talk
No,
about,
I guess not fun, but more interesting to talk about at least.
for sure. I guess just get in the meat and like potatoes of this. How how has the coronavirus affected you like personally?
Um, I actually overall, personally, for me, it's been kind of beneficial. Like I haven't eaten out as much. Um, I've started to drink more coffee than soda. Um, I've had more time to kind of work on myself in a lot of ways. However, that's not me like under um, under hyping what's happening here. It's devastating. Like there's a good chance that I think a scientist said that 20% of our workforce could go unemployed um, by the end of the month. Uh, so there's a lot of bad going on. But in my life, it's really just been a way to kind of spend more time with my family. What
That
about you?
I same. I haven't done much. I haven't really left the house. Well, I have, but it's only like to go work out at someone's house or something. It's not
Yeah.
like I honestly I haven't been like in public. Like I haven't been into a grocery store. I haven't been into anything else in a really long time. And
Hmm.
it's just been it's been weird not being able to do the things I'm used to do. Yeah.
No, going to grocery stores these days is just crazy. Whenever you go, you find out that, a lot of times over half of the items are gone. They're already out of toilet paper, out of a lot of basic necessities. Um, and that's an experience that I don't think we're really used to in the US because usually we have enough supplies. Even whenever we have a hurricane or something like that, where people buy tons of survivor items, um, those items are usually replenished by the end of the week. And while we are replenishing them, in a sense, we're also buying more than we have. So there's definitely a sense that we are running out of a lot of supplies, in a sense.
Hmm. And what do you think that we could do to combat that?
Uh, See, that's a um, difficult question to answer because usually what you would want to do is increase production. However, in this situation, we actually can't increase production because that actually increases the spread of the coronavirus. So, like, take for example, China, New York, and I think it was Illinois have already canceled, or their governor has already told businesses that are non-essential to stay home. So all the workers have to stay home. So it's 100% worker lockdown, except for non-essential workers. Essential workers is like those related to the medical industry, a lot of times food, agriculture, medical supplies in a sense, but a lot of other things. They're just being told to stay home now, and that's really really big because a lot of our items now are no longer being produced. And even then, a lot of the medical items that we usually rely on, we're running out of because the United States is no longer a manufacturing power that it once was. So, like a lot of our doctors and our hospitals are saying how they're running out of, I think it was Q-tips, because Q-tips are no longer really manufactured in the U.S. They're manufactured in China, and China shut down all their manufacturing, or the majority of their manufacturing, to deal with the coronavirus. So we are no longer able to get the basic supplies that we need because the U.S. doesn't even manufacture enough. So really, the best thing that we can do is try to slow down the curve, um, and that is basically just by carrying out lockdowns. Don't go on big things for spring break. Instead, just try to stay home. Try to limit travel as much as possible, because the longer that, or the less steep the curve is, the better, because our hospitals can treat it a lot better. Um, Another thing that we can do is kind of repurpose a lot of the manufacturing that we do have to produce more medical equipment. So, for example, Ford and Tesla have already stated that they're trying to manufacture or work out their manufacturing so that they can start producing medical supplies instead of cars,
Hmm.
which would be key. If we could get that done, then that would be incredible. That could really help, but in the short term, it's all about just trying to limit how many people get infected. It's really scary in certain areas. So luckily in Liberty, Missouri, I don't know if we're really going to be one of the key places hit, because we do have a relatively affluent community, as well as one that is relatively spread out and less dense. But like New York City, the mayor of New York City just came out and said that they had enough supplies for 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm.
Then after that, they don't have anything. And if you're in that situation, it's a very scary prospect. Uh, and if anyone has bought um, a lot of those gloves or the masks before, so whenever they were hearing about the coronavirus, they're a private citizen and they bought those. Really, what they should be doing is donating those things to the hospitals, because the hospitals are running out of those items. And the hospitals, to be quite honest, for the vast majority of the situations, need those items more than private individuals do. Because, the hospitals are dealing with this on a day to day situations, but individuals might only come across it uh, once every week or something like that. And if you get the doctor sick, then no one's there to treat the actual infected patients. So really, the best thing is just to decrease a lot of our demand for items. If you have one of those medical equipment or have some of the items that hospitals need, to donate those items to the hospitals, they
Hmm.
can really use it. And that's how we're going to get through this. I think it's fair to say that this is going to be very destructive, not only in the way of lives, but also in cost. We've already seen that drops in the stock market, like what we saw during the Great Recession, have started to occur. And some people might say, "Oh, but that's different." It's just important to recognize it right now. I know this is sounding pessimistic, but it really isn't, because you also have to remember that unlike the other recessions, this recession has been caused by the coronavirus. So once we fix the coronavirus or stop it, then the economy should bounce back, which would be great. But it's always good to actually recognize what's in front of you.
Hmm. So, what you're saying is everyone needs to play their part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really, to be quite honest, we are in a another world war, um, and it's actually quite likely that if we don't deal with this the right way, that this coronavirus could kill more Americans than World War II did.
Hmm.
Um, and that's very important to recognize because I think the number of Americans who died during World War II was around 500,000. But there is a fairly good chance that if we don't stop this now, this coronavirus could kill millions, or at the very least hundreds of thousands. But I would actually even say millions is probably more of what you're looking at,
Now,
because the mortality rate is around, I think it was 3.4% in China originally. I think they might have scaled it down, but even if it was 1%, which is a good deal below what a lot of people are thinking it is, you'd at least see 2 million Americans die, which is scary. It's a very scary prospect. Um, but it also highlights how we need to treat this like we would if we were fighting an actual enemy, like if we were fighting China or another threat like that. Um, and we need to all recognize that we have to do something about it. So, like, getting rid of all unnecessary travel and trying to limit our consumption of supplies that hospitals need. That is really the best thing that we can do.
do you view this as a domestic problem or like a more international? Like, do you think we should?
Oh, it's definitely international. And you can actually see this in diplomacy right now. So, like, right now, China is actually starting to tell its citizens that the coronavirus wasn't started really at the fault of China, but was somehow started by American soldiers. That's what they're telling their citizens right now. Uh, and it's a total lie. But what you end up finding is that basically made Donald Trump start calling the coronavirus the China virus,
Hmm.
which I don't necessarily think it's the most helpful thing, but there's definitely going to have to be some ramifications against the Chinese government because they did try to limit the amount of free speech carried out by its citizens about this pandemic right at the very beginning. And I believe they didn't even allow US scientists or doctors to go to Wuhan originally. And if we would have had more scientists there, there's a fairly good chance that we could have had a much better shot at stopping the coronavirus from really spreading in the US.
Hmm. So,
But keep going.
no, you go, keep going. You finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to continue that by saying it's also affecting politics as well. Um, Actually, it's affecting it quite a bit because if you're looking at the 2020 election, and that's you have to recognize that this is going to impact the 2020 election no matter what. Trump has actually gained approval rating as a result of the coronavirus. So I think either a week ago or 2 weeks ago, his approval rating carried out by a poll was 49%. At that time, I believe that was his highest approval rating he's ever gotten. Now it's 53%. Um, because people like that he's taking charge of the crisis. Now the ironic thing is that for weeks he had called the crisis a hoax and something spread by the Democrats,
Hmm.
um, and he said that it was no worse than the flu. But what we see now is that a lot of Americans are looking at him take charge and do all these things, and they like that. So it's actually helping Trump's chance of getting reelected.
Now, do you think we'll even have an election coming this fall?
That is a great question. We held primaries in Illinois, Florida, and I think Arizona, which I think was an awful idea. But we held those last Tuesday. Um, Even whenever people knew that the coronavirus was spreading, the Democratic Party in a lot of those states, as well as the Republican Party, I believe, um, decided that they would like to hold those primaries.
Hmm.
Uh, it really was quite. It's a very bad response, um, because it really does show you that a lack of care for human life from those political parties, and it's too bad that they actually decided to go through with that. I think that they should have put those off. That's what Ohio did. The governor of Ohio actually said, "We're no longer going to do primaries. We'll do them at a later date." The judge in Ohio actually said, "Well, you can't do that. I'm ruling that unconstitutional by the Ohio state laws or whatever."
Mhm.
Then the health department of Ohio just said, "Nope, we're doing that," and then they decided to suspend that or just suspend the voting. That was probably the best thing to do, especially whenever we're dealing with this. If you look at a lot of the other countries, we can learn a lot about what works and what doesn't by how other countries have dealt with this. So, for example, Italy. Italy did not respond very quickly to this. They started the lockdown once it had already spread throughout the entire country, and it wasn't that effective. And now they're losing close to 1,000 people a day,
Mhm.
which is it's a very sad thing. It's very startling. Um, Germany, on the other hand, is they went into a lockdown right away, and they were very effective with their lockdown. I think they had legal force behind like closing of all restaurants, and their spread has been minimalized significantly. It's very impressive how they've been able to kind of limit the spread of the coronavirus, and it's been saving lives as a result because their hospitals can take care of all of the people that are infected, which, as you can imagine, definitely saves a lot of lives. It increases the chance of living.
Mhm. So, do you think that our government should have shut everything down way sooner, or do you think we were at a respectable time?
We definitely should have shut down like certain key areas, and we should have shut down a lot of like interstate travel. Um, I think that did we necessarily need to carry out a quarantine? No. Whenever I say shut down interstate travel, I'm talking about like residential travel, not necessarily like infrastructure or like transportation of products. We can still have the transportation of products, but I think that we definitely should have shut down or try to limit as much travel as possible. Because as you probably saw all the pictures. We still had teenagers go on spring break trips to Florida or to California, and you can see pictures of them on the beach. Um, and the thing is that is very scary because now if you just had one person on the beach there, because Florida is actually starting to get pretty hit as well, all those teens are going to get the coronavirus and take it back to where they came from,
Hmm.
which is just going to make it even more difficult for us to be able to deal with this. It's that that was a really bad decision on the part of the government was not to limit that type of travel, but I think they didn't want to mess up the economy too much, but you have to recognize that our economy is going to get hit either way. Like I talked about, they're predicting that like 20% of our workforce is going to go unemployed at some point.
Hmm.
Um, and that is Great Depression level unemployment.
Now, do you think
And
we'll enter another depression or just a recession?
probably a recession. It really depends on if our financial institutions collapse.
Hmm.
Because that was big thing between the Great Depression is that we had a lot of our banks start collapsing, and then individuals ended up going or losing all their savings within a few months. I don't know if that's going to happen, but a lot of 401ks, as well as just investments, are losing a lot of their value right now. Like we've been seeing steep drops, like for weeks upon weeks, in the stock market, and people are getting pretty afraid. Um, and we also have to recognize that a lot of our economy now is driven by uh, by restaurants, by uh, dealing with consumers, and that is really shut down. We are not going to have uh, dining in restaurants for a long time.
Hmm.
Like we're not going to have school for a long time too. Because I mean, think about it this way too. If we're not having school, we're probably not going to be paying for the janitors at our school, which means that they're probably going to be out of a job too. So a lot of people are going to go unemployed, and we're going to have to find a situation or a solution to that unemployment.
Now, what could the United States do to get out of this unemployment, this massive unemployment?
Yeah, so we're probably just going to have to carry out a massive stimulus package. Um, and that's already being talked about within the Senate and the House. We're trying to give. Funny that the Andrew Yang just dropped out because a lot of people are starting to think about giving a universal basic income or a check to every individual during this. Right now, it's a very small amount. It's like $1,000 or $2,000, but we could see more and more checks as this goes on. So if this goes on for more than a month, we might get another check, and same and same and same, which would kind of get the US into the habit of giving out a lot of these universal basic incomes. And so a lot of people are kind of, I think they're going to grow attached to getting a check by the government. Um, and so we'll see how that goes. I'll be curious to find out what else they do. I know that another thing too is that I think they're trying to cancel the interest. Maybe not cancel, but um, they're stopping any interest on federal student loans. Um, and I heard some plans about also stopping like the stopping banks from taking away businesses too. So like banks from taking away the property of certain industries whenever those industries can't pay back to the bank. I think they're trying to stop that too. So we'll find out in the future what's going to happen. But they're trying as much as they can in a lot of ways. This is a crisis we've never seen before.
And I mean, that's why I wanted to get you on here to get your take of it because the United States has never faced something quite as bizarre as this, and it's just
Oh
kind
yeah,
of what do we do, you know?
yeah. Well, I think and it's interesting too. Like the Spanish flu. You know where the Spanish flu started?
Spain? I don't know.
Nope. No, it started in Kansas.
Really?
Yeah. The thing about the Spanish flu was that it started in Kansas, and then the United States government didn't report it at all because they were in the middle of World War One, and it just spread around the U.S. Like we didn't do anything about it.
Hmm.
Maybe local governments did something about it, but not the national one. But then Mexico actually started to report uh, this new virus that was going around, and then it got the name of the Spanish flu because people thought it started in Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, and so we have been in a similar situation with a very lethal virus, but we are much more interconnected these days than we used to, than we used to be as a global community. Um, we are actually trying to fight it this time, which hopefully will lead to, you know, less deaths than we saw before. Um, and overall, the United States was not the original nation that had it, so we are in a little bit better situation. And the Spanish flu targeted a lot of younger individuals. This one targets older individuals, which you know depends on your perspective. But from an economic perspective, targeting the young is devastating to future economic development. So, we'll find out about what happens, but we have been in similar situations, but not the same one.
Hmm. So, in your view, do you think we're doing enough, or is there more that we should be doing besides the all the quarantine stuff you brought up earlier?
I think that we should do more to encourage the manufacturing of medical supplies. You know, if we could manufacture double the amount that we usually would,
Hmm.
I think we'd be in a much stronger situation. I know right now a lot of doctors are actually being told by their hospital to bring homemade masks and gloves, which is awful. It's awful because there's no quality control, and so they're not nearly as effective as a lot of the masks and the gloves that we would buy from the store. You
Hmm.
know, so oftentimes sewed masks do not have the same type of protection um, as the masks that you buy at the store, and there's oftentimes holes. There's no way to check that they're effective, and so that increases the risk of our doctors getting sick. You know, whenever Italy was originally dealing with this, part of the problem that they were dealing with was at least 10% of their doctors had the coronavirus. Now, the problem with that is that not only are you going to take doctors out of commission once they start to show symptoms, but those doctors are also getting a variety of individuals sick who aren't sick whenever they just come into contact with them, and everyone's going to be coming into contact with these doctors. So, you know, just making sure that the doctors have as much protection and as much um, have all that they need, the equipment that they need, as well as just kind of minimalizing as much of our travel as possible is really the only way that we are going to be able to deal with this.
Right on. Well, Warren, I appreciate you coming on here today. Um,
Yeah, no, thank you.
yeah, I mean, I love hearing what you have to say, and I'll definitely
Oh,
have to get you back on here some other time. What's up,
no,
man?
now that I think about it, one quick thing. I know that this isn't necessarily about the overarching situation, but AP testing has been changed quite a bit too.
I saw
Um,
that.
yeah, so it's going to be, first of all, it's going to be online, which is a big change. It's going to be from your house. It's going to be 45 minutes long. It's going to only be free response, no multiple choice. And it's only going to be over the content that we learn in March. Uh, that is really big because what that means is that if you're in an AP class, if your teacher's really trying to teach you over what's going to be over on the AP test, they don't have any new content to teach you for the next month and a half. It's
Hmm.
just going to be a review for the next month and a half.
So, what? I feel like that's not a great measure of how you're understanding.
Oh no, no, and this is the thing too, is that the AP test is it, it's it functions so that you are in competition with the other students. So if the other students do well, and you know you might do a little bit worse than them, you might get a lower grade because all the other students did well, so the college board believes that the test was easy. If they did poorly and you did all right on it, you might still get a 5 or a 4 because everyone else did awful or poorly on it. Now, what happens if a relatively large portion of the population who take the test cheat, which I doubt that they're going to be able to actually stop? That means that it's going to lower the grade for everyone who doesn't cheat, because more often than not, if you do cheat, that's a pretty major advantage, especially in a course such as calculus, where you can take out your notes and everything. Um, and so, really, what they've done is they've created a situation in which you are encouraged to cheat no matter what. Because if you cheat and no one else cheats, you have an advantage. If everyone else cheats but you don't cheat, you lose. So really, it's too bad because I think that's going to be the way that a lot of kids think. And again, there's no kind of quality control over over the AP testing, um, which you can argue doesn't really uh, make it a very effective determinant of how effective you are on that subject.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and that was the first thing that came to my mind. It was like, who's gonna stop me or anyone else from cheating?
Oh yeah,
And I think that's just the nature of it, especially being at home. I think any home assessment we take, no matter what class, there's going to be cheating on it.
oh of course.
I,
And but the thing is, a lot of those classes are probably not going to have the same curve, right? Like I know AP US. if people cheat on it, I mean, I don't mind if they cheat because there's no curve on the test. Your score is your score. But on an AP test, uh, if there is a massive curve, because it is really a test determined by those curves, then it does make you worry a lot more about how you're going to do, because a lot of those people, aren't doing it the right way.
Hmm.
Um, so, I'm still going to stick with it. I'm just going to study quite a bit. Um, but if you're not going to do anything like that, just use this time to study quite a bit so that you can compete with a lot of those kids that are not going to study at all and just kind of take up the textbook.
Hmm. Well, Warren, I'm proud to say that you're one of the good ones.
No, thank you. I I know we gotta do like a study thing coming up about for calculus coming up.
I know the calc's gonna be interesting because you said everything in the month of March.
Yeah, so it's gonna be March and like earlier.
Okay,
So March will be the last unit that we'll cover, and I'm really curious about what Mr. Barnard is gonna do.
so am I.
Because no more concept quizzes. We might take this unit test. I don't know, to be quite honest, um, because that's it. We're not doing any more stuff. I mean, unless Mr. Barnard goes further, which wouldn't be on the test. And just by judging Mr. Barnard, I think he's not the type of person to do stuff that isn't going to help you on the test, if you know what I'm saying. Or
Hmm.
like sacrifice your ability to do well in the test for like teaching some other subject. So, we'll see in the future, but a lot of teachers are trying to adjust to this situation.
And in my opinion, I don't know if this is the best scenario either because the last 2 months of a class could be the most important.
Oh, yeah.
And how can you carry over those skills if you don't exactly know the rest of your like course? Like going from like
Yep.
AP Calc AB to BC. How does that translate?
Yep. No, you're definitely right. Like a lot of kids who are taking BC next year, there's probably going to be content that they covered during the last 2 months of AB,
Hmm.
and now they aren't going to have that. But you and I are graduating this year, so I guess we don't have that problem necessarily.
Nope, not
Uh,
not quite.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, you bring up a good point there. Um, Anyone who's taking a class that you need a lot of the subject for the following year, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to uh, adjust to that.
For sure, for sure.
I mean, there's even a chance that our next semester, so not the semester we're in, but next fall, that might actually start out as an online school too. Um,
Yikes.
yeah, I know. Not a good start to college,
Uh-uh.
but it is definitely a chance. Depending on, first of all, if we can get some treatment. If we can get treatment, then probably much more of a chance of us going to school, or if we get a vaccine. But I think the vaccine is we are going to see that in 6 months to a year. To be quite honest, it's not going to be within the next few months. Um, but just need to think about that and realize how that's going to affect your life and your school or your career in the future.
Hmm. Okay, in your opinion, giving a rough high school estimate, how long do you think this will go on for?
I'll probably go with what the government estimate is, where they said that this will start significantly cooling down in July or August. So late July or August. That was what I think it was the CDC said, or at least one of the White House White House task forces for the coronavirus. That was their assessment, and I think that overall we should trust that assessment.
Hmm.
Um, could it go on longer? Yes. Could it go on a little shorter? it could also go on a little shorter. It really depends on how people react to this situation. So, if you're a young kid and you don't think that this is a threat to you or your family, like I know most of my family are much younger than what it's lethal to, and you go out and you just hang out with friends all the time in large groups, you are increasing the chance of it continuing into next year. Because you have to realize that even though you might not be at risk, there are other people in your neighborhood that are at risk. And we've already found out that, the traces of the coronavirus can stay on objects for 24 hours. So if you touch an object, even if you don't show any symptoms, let's say at a grocery store, and then someone from a nursing home then touches that same object or buys the same object a few hours later, then you've put a lot of people at risk. Now, that's not to say that you can't go out. You should go out to go get supplies and to go to work if you need to. But for anything that isn't necessary for your daily survival or your life or your career, just try to limit that as much as possible. Still talk to friends. You can go out on walks, especially in Liberty. We're pretty spread out. As long as you don't come into close contact with someone, you're absolutely fine with a walk. Um, but don't go in those massive groups or go to any parties. Because I did see a video of someone having a coronavirus party, um, in which they invited dozens of people. Uh, don't do that. Um, Instead, just kind of hang out. You know, realize that you know tens of years ago or decades ago, we had our ancestors, fight a world war, and that was their sacrifice. Our sacrifice is to stay home and watch Netflix. I would definitely take the latter situation. Um, and you can still hang out with friends over the phone or playing video games or whatever it is. So that's really all that we can do.
Yeah, I'm with you, Warren. And yeah, I think we're running close on time right now. But yeah, once again, I appreciate you coming on here. You always have some great stuff to talk about.
No, thank you, Trevor. I'm glad that you invited me.
Anytime, and then definitely in a couple weeks or so, I want to get you back on here, get your opinion on stuff.
No, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then hopefully we'll have this live stuff figured out a little bit more. So
Yeah,
all
that's
right,
right.
Warren, I'll catch you later, man.
Catch you later. Bye.
Bye. So that was Mr. Warren Barge, future politician, man, the myth, the legend. I'm always astonished with what he said, even though I might have looked a little bored. I'm just trying to soak in everything he says. He always has something intelligent to say. So I can't wait to see what he does in the future. Um, and yeah, so I guess it's time to cover a couple of the main headlines for today. So this is all from the New York Times, and I have about 5 headlines that I saw pretty interesting. Actually, one of these isn't from the New York Times. But the first one being is that New York has roughly 5% of the corona cases worldwide. 5% of corona. Are you kidding me? And then they say that they have 15,168 confirmed cases. That doesn't include all the people that aren't confirmed. All the people that Warren were talking about that go to grocery stores, touch something, not knowing they have corona, come home later to figure it out. That's a ridiculous amount of people. And then if Warren's statistics true, where we see 2 million Americans dead, holy cow, that's crazy. Flatten that curve, stay home, and wash your hands. The next headline is that the governors plead for masks and ventilators, but the top U.S. officials say that some areas are going to have to wait. I guess they're trying to figure out these big issue places such as Los Angeles and New York before they figure out places such as Liberty, Missouri. I guess prioritization has to be a thing, and if it's prioritization in this case, I think that's for the best because if we can clear up some beds in New York, then that's just going to be a greater thing to lower that curve. The next one is that thousands of health workers in Spain are testing positive for the coronavirus. Exactly what Warren was talking about earlier, with people having to go through doctors. If these doctors are getting sick and we're taking them out of the line of work, what happens next? It's we got to do our best to just keep giving them and donating them the material so they can help the people who are really sick, rather than someone, I guess, being selfish and keeping it for themselves. It's just interesting to see, man, and to watch how everything else is going to play out in the future. It's going to be definitely an event to see. The next one is that the warmer weather could slow the spread of corona. Now, depending on who you listen to, I've heard multiple things with this, and I've heard some pretty good arguments. For example, like MERS, um, that was spread through camels in the Middle East, and that's 110-degree temperatures, and MERS still spread around. Um, this New York Times article was saying that warmer weather and weather like Warren was talking about in July and late June, or late June, yeah, I said that right, could slow down the spread of corona. Would be interesting. I guess only time will tell, and hopefully I'm not still making these podcasts until then. Even though I love doing them, I'd rather be out enjoying my life. So yeah, and then I guess the biggest headline that affects me the most is that my home place of Kansas City is being ordered to stay home effective this Tuesday. So we're going to be told to stay home and basically not leave unless it's essential travel. So that kind of sucks. I mean, I've basically been practicing that already, besides going to Emily's house and working out. But I think from what we've been doing, we've been practicing pretty, just being sanitary, wiping down all her weights in there and stuff. So yeah, that's just intriguing to say. So now we can go to the third area of today's podcast, and that's what I've been doing today. So this morning I woke up about 9 a.m., which is really late for me. I stayed up pretty late, or stayed up pretty late last night. I was jamming out. I was listening to one of my favorite albums. Here, I got that right here. My two favorite albums, and that's Blink 182's California. If you haven't listened to this, it's a great album. I think it does just a great job of exploring the psyche of humans, and just what it's like growing up, and having emotions and feelings for people. So Blink 182's California came out a couple years ago. It's a good album, and I was also jamming out to Def Leppard's Hysteria. These are both double albums, by the way, but great albums. You should listen to them. I listen to them, and yeah. So I stayed up pretty late listening, just rocking out to that, and then went to bed, woke up 9 a.m. Sorry, had some pancakes, and then I kind of rearranged my basement, not my basement, my garage to help facilitate my working out schedule. So with this quarantine, I'm not too sure I want to be traveling too much. So we set up our treadmill and just a couple weights, like light weights, and even though I prefer to lift heavier weights to get that absolute pump, which that'd be a good podcast idea actually. Um, I got to use what I have, so yeah, we set that up, and then the rest of the morning until now, I've just been trying to figure out this podcast scenario and how to do it live. I'm not sure the method I'm doing right now is the best opportunity. Tomorrow, I'm going to try something a little bit different, but I'm still going to have a call in. I'm going to call in one of my early podcast pals, Bill Bendur. So I can't wait to see that, and then hopefully what I'm doing is going to fix it. This podcast could have sounded like complete garbage. I'm not exactly sure. But I'll figure it out. I'm still trying to iron out this podcast. But yeah, that's basically all thoughts and opinions I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys are still washing your hands, and this is going to be the way it is for a while. So wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.